The wind screamed through Thunder Valley, a merciless howl that tore at the soul of the Montana Territory in the winter of 1885. Inside a weathered schoolhouse clinging to the edge of the frozen plain, Clara Hensley stood alone, her breath fogging in the dim light of a dying fire. The last stick of firewood crackled weakly, its heat no match for the frost creeping through the warped boards. Clara's fingers, numb despite her threadbare gloves, clutched a tarnished silver locket, her only tether to a life that had crumbled 6 months ago. Her husband, Daniel, was gone, taken by fever. Her infant son hadn't survived the spring. The weight of their absence pressed against her chest, heavier than the snow piling outside. She was 24, a widow, a schoolteacher, and a secret keeper. No one in town knew her pantry was bare, that her last coin had bought a useless tonic for a child who'd never wake. Pride sealed her lips, but hunger gnawed at her resolve. Clara's hazel eyes, once bright with purpose, now flickered with something brittle, determination laced with despair. She straightened, smoothing her faded black dress, and stepped toward the school bell's rope. Her arm trembled, weak from days without a proper meal. But she pulled anyway. The bell's clang cut through the storm, a defiant call to the children she refused to fail. Little Grace Miller was the first to arrive, her small face pink from the cold, clutching a bundle wrapped in brown paper. "Mice and cornbread, Miss Hensley," she said, steam rising from the package. Clara's stomach twisted, a sharp pang of need she fought to hide. "That's kind. 100 to 1 own. Grace, but I've eaten. Worm. She lied, her voice steady despite the ache. Grace's mother, Ellen Miller, had likely seen the truth. Clara's hollow cheeks, the way her dress hung looser each week. The town whispered. She knew, but Clara forced a smile. "Let's get you inside before the frost bites." The children trickled in, stomping snow from their boots, their chatter a fleeting warmth. Clara broke the cornbread into pieces, giving it to the youngest. Ignoring her own hunger, she turned to the blackboard, Daniel's locket pressing against her ribs through her pocket, a reminder of time frozen at his last breath. Her chalk scratched out arithmetic problems, but her mind wandered to the empty house waiting for her, its silence louder than the storm. A shadow crossed the window. John Carver, owner of the biggest cattle ranch in 3 counties, rode by on his black stallion. His broad shoulders and weathered hat were unmistakable. Even through the frost-etched glass, Clara's jaw tightened. John, with his piercing gray eyes and reputation as a man who bent the world to his will, had argued she shouldn't teach after Daniel's death. "A widow's place isn't in a schoolroom," he'd said at the board meeting, his voice like gravel. She felt his gaze now, heavy and unyielding, as if he waited for her to break. The morning dragged, each lesson a battle against the cold seeping into her bones. "Oh, what?" By noon, Clara dismissed the children to eat outside, claiming she had papers to grade. Alone, she sank onto a bench, pulling the locket from her pocket. Its clasp was stubborn, but it opened to Daniel's faded photograph, his soft smile a ghost of better days. Her vision blurred, not from tears but from weakness. 3 days since her last real meal, and the world tilted sideways. "Miss Hensley." The deep rumble startled her. John Carver filled the doorway, his presence swallowing the small room. Clara shoved the locket away, standing too quickly. Dizziness swept over her, but she gripped the desk. "Mr. Carver, she said, her tone clipped. "The board meeting's not till afternoon. Thought I'd sit in on a lesson," he said, stepping inside, bringing the scent of leather and pine. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, missed nothing, not her trembling hands, not the faint smudge of chalk on her cheek. "If you don't mind." She minded. She minded his judgment, his wealth, his certainty that she was too fragile for this life. But he was on the school board, and she had no choice. "Of course not," she said, turning to the blackboard. The children returned, their chatter faltering at the sight of the imposing rancher squeezed into a back bench. Clara launched into a history lesson, her voice steady despite the tremor in her limbs. She was describing the Oregon Trail when darkness crept into her vision, a cold tide pulling her under. The last thing she saw was John rising, his stern face softening with something like fear. Then the floor met her, and Daniel's locket pressed against her heart as the world faded. Clara woke to murmurs and the scratch of wool against her skin. She lay on the schoolroom settee, a blanket draped over her. The air smelled of coffee and concern. Ellen Miller's voice was low but clear. She's been starving herself. Poor thing. We all saw it. Old Mrs. Tate clucked her tongue. Stubborn as her father was. Someone's doing something now, John said, his voice a quiet thunder that silenced the others. Clara's eyes fluttered open. Meeting his, he stood over her, his face unreadable but his presence solid. I can manage, she croaked, hating how weak she sounded. Clearly, he said, sarcasm edged with worry. He turned to the women. Thank you. Ladies, I'll take it from here. Clara wanted to protest, but the room spun when she tried to sit up. She let John help her stand, her body betraying her by leaning into his warmth. The wagon ride to her small house was silent, her humiliation a bitter taste. She stared at her hands, once soft, now thin as a bird's wing, afraid to meet his eyes. At her door, John lifted her down without asking, carrying her inside like she weighed nothing. The house was dark, the hearth cold. Where's your kindling? He asked, setting her in Daniel's old armchair. In the kitchen, she said faintly. Don't trouble yourself. He was already gone, his boots heavy on the floor. A sharp breath from the kitchen told her he'd found the truth. A row of empty medicine bottles, their labels promising miracles that had failed Daniel. John returned, setting them on the mantel like evidence. How much did you spend on these? His voice was careful, but Clara felt exposed, her pride stripped bare. Everything, she whispered, the word jagged in her throat. The doctor said they'd help. Daniel was in so much pain. John's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Moving to build a fire with kindling she hadn't known she had. The flames caught, casting shadows across his face. Concern where she'd expected judgment. When did you last eat? He asked. Yesterday, she mumbled, unsure if it was true. He muttered something sharp, then stood. Stay here, Mr. Carver. I don't need, her voice cracked. Pride rallying one last time. This isn't charity. Mrs. Hensley, he snapped, his eyes flashing. It's decency. Something you've forgotten applies to you. The truth stung, leaving her speechless. He softened, his voice low. I'll be back. Try to stay awake. The door closed, and Clara was alone with the ghosts of her choices. The medicine bottles gleamed accusingly, proof of her desperation to save a man already slipping away. Daniel's locket lay heavy in her pocket, marking the moment he'd left her. Outside, wolves howled, their voices sharp with winter's hunger. She stared at the dying fire, too weak to cry, wondering if she'd survive the night. A crash jolted her. The door burst open, letting in a blast of cold and John's towering silhouette. He carried a crate, steam rising from it in the frigid air. Mrs. Hensley, Clara, he said, her name a shock that pulled her back. He knelt, his rough hands catching hers. Stay with me. His voice held no pity, only a raw urgency that made her chest ache. He rebuilt the fire, the room warming as he unpacked the crate. Turimum, imem, bread, stew, futurito. Cresfic at the coffee, apples. Clara's stomach growled, betraying her. I won't take charity, she whispered, but the smell of food unraveled her resolve. John paused, his eyes hard. My wife, Sarah, you, said the same thing, right until the end. The words hung heavy. Clara knew the whispers. Sarah Carver, dead 5 years from illness. Her husband left a widower. She refused help, kept working, kept hiding her sickness. By the time she fell, it was too late. He spooned stew into a bowl, crouching beside her. I watched her die because she was too proud. I won't watch it happen again. Clara's hands shook as she took the bowl. The first taste was overwhelming, rich, warm, real. Tears fell, unbidden. Slowly, John cautioned, his voice gentle. Too much will make you sick. She managed a few bites before her stomach protested. He set the bowl aside, draping a quilt over her. Why? She asked, her voice small. You didn't want me teaching. You said I didn't belong. I said a lot of stupid things, he admitted, staring out the window. Seeing you in that schoolhouse, wearing black like Sarah did. I thought it'd be like watching her fade again. But you're not her. You're you. And I waited too long to help. You're helping now, she said, the words slipping out. He turned, and in the firelight, she saw guilt carved into his face, years of loss mirrored in his eyes. They sat in silence. Two people bound by grief, recognizing something unspoken in each other's pain. Exhaustion pulled at her. John steadied her as she swayed. "You need rest," he said, his tone firm. "And food. And medicine. Things I should have insured months ago. I can't accept. You can. And you will." His voice left no room for argument. "I've sent for Ellen Miller. She'll help you settle. Tomorrow we'll talk about what comes next." Clara wanted to argue, but warmth and food dulled her edges. She watched him bring in more supplies, wood, blankets, basics, as if he could anchor her to life by sheer will. "Rest," he said as her eyes grew heavy. "You're not alone anymore." She drifted off. Daniel's locket still in her pocket, its weight lighter somehow, as if time might move forward after all. Morning brought the clatter of women in her kitchen. Ellen Miller and Mrs. Tate bustled about, unpacking provisions, their voices hushed but warm. Sunlight poured through clean windows. Someone had scrubbed away months of neglect. "Look who's awake." "The Ranierister in Mesibo," Ellen said, handing Clara coffee, sweet and hot. "You scared us yesterday." "I'm sorry," Clara murmured, sitting up in Daniel's chair, the quilt slipping to her lap. "Shucked hush," Mrs. Tate said, bringing eggs and toast. "Eat first. Apologize later." Clara ate slowly, her strength flickering back. The women spoke of John's efforts. Half the town had sent food, delivered quietly to spare her pride. "Mr. Carver's outside," Ellen said. "Says he needs to talk business. We can stay if you want." "Nah," Clara said, smoothing her dress. "I'll manage." They left, exchanging glances. And John stepped in, snow dusting his coat. He carried a leather folder, his face all business. "Mrs. Hensley, Eptidium," he said, "Pinarinam, Wernem," sitting across from her, feeling stronger. "He'd warned Hannah warns." "Yes," she said, meeting his eyes, though gratitude warred with unease. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." He pulled a sheet of paper from the folder. A contract, written in his bold hand. "I have a proposition, one that helps us both." Clara read it, her breath catching. "You want me to teach at your ranch? My Hand's children need schooling. 12 of them, ages 5 to 14. They ride hours to town. Too dangerous in winter. You'd have a salary. Better than the town's the one. Son, room and board at my house, where my housekeeper, Mrs. Lisanai, can watch your health. A classroom in the old bunkhouse. Foreign sir. Come spring, you choose, stay or return to town." Her hands tightened on the paper. "You spoke to the board without asking me." "I explored options," he said evenly. "The choice is yours. But hear me out. The town's talking about yesterday, about me bringing you home. This contract protects your reputation, lets you teach, Chartorn, keeps you strong." Clara read it again. The terms were generous, but something else stirred. A lifeline, not a cage. "Why do this?" she asked. He hesitated, then met her eyes. "Because I watched Sarah die teaching children she loved. Because I've seen you nearly do the same. Because maybe this time I can choose differently." She thought of her cold house, the empty bottles, the whispers waiting in town. Then of the children, their eager faces, the chance to teach without falling apart. "If I agree," she said, "I have conditions." A faint smile touched his lips. "Name them, funds, my own rooms, full control in the classroom. And in spring, I decide my path." "Already in there." He offered a pen. "Do we have a deal?" Clara looked at the contract, then at him. She took the pen and signed. "We do." The Carver Ranch bunkhouse smelled of fresh sawdust and possibility. Clara stood at a new blackboard, watching her students file in, ranch hands children. Their clothes patched but clean, eyes wide with curiosity. Mrs. Lee had helped her unpack that morning, setting Daniel's locket on her desk. For the first time, its presence felt like memory, not pain. "Good morning, class." "Naranudum," Clara said, and 12 voices answered. Some shy, some bold. Little Lily Wong, 6 years old, clutched her slate like a treasure, her dark braids bouncing as she volunteered to write the date. December 10th, 1885. Clara smiled, her heart lifting at the girl's excitement. The lessons flew by, the children different from her town students. Tougher, shaped by ranch life, Speaking of calves and storms with ease, some, like Lily, mixed English with Chinese or Spanish, their parents' languages woven into their words. At lunch, a Bishin, Mrs. Lee brought soup and bread, her sharp eyes ensuring Clara ate. Mr. Carver says no skipping meals, she said, her tone brooking no argument. Clara learned quickly that Mrs. Lee was a force, small, fierce, and fiercely loyal to John. She didn't protest, savoring the warmth of the meal, the strength it gave her. The afternoon was art, the children drawing their homes. Lily's picture stopped Clara's breath. A bunkhouse classroom, vivid with detail. But at the window stood a figure, unmistakable in his wide hat. John watching. Samiti, he makes sure you're okay. Lily whispered. Pa says Mr. Carver's happier since you came. Clara's cheeks warmed. It's beautiful. Lily, she said, tucking the drawing away. As the children left, two older boys, Benny Miller and Wei Wong, lingered, giggling. Teacher's got a sweetheart. Benny teased. That's enough, Clara said. But her blush betrayed her. Alone, she touched Daniel's locket, its silver catching the light. Her reflection showed something new, a spark in her eyes, a hint of life returning. A knock broke her thoughts. John stood in the doorway, holding Lily's drawing. They're happy, he said, studying the picture. You're good with them. They're eager learners, she replied, stacking books to avoid his gaze. His presence filled the room, steady and unsettling. Mrs. Lee says you're eating better. Mrs. Lee tells you everything, Clara said, half smiling. She takes her job seriously. He paused, then nodded at the drawing. Lily thinks I'm your guard dog now. She's observant, Clara said, meeting his eyes on me already yours. Thank you. John, for everything, he shifted, uncomfortable with gratitude. Join me for dinner. Mrs. Lee's making noodles. She'll worry if you eat alone. Clara hesitated, propriety tugging at her, but the memory of her empty house, its cold silence, tipped the scale. I'd like that, she said. They walked to the main house, the distance between them charged with something unspoken. Clara realized she'd left Daniel's locket on her desk, and for the first time, she didn't mind. The wolves came during spelling lessons. Clara was correcting Benny's work when a low growl froze the room. Every child went still, ranch-bred instincts kicking in. Away from the windows, she said, her voice calm despite her racing heart. Through the frosted glass, she saw them, four gray shapes, lean and desperate, their breath clouding the air. Lily whimpered, and Clara pulled her close, counting heads. 12 children, 2 windows. Antimanomum. One door. The main house was too far across the open snow. A wolf scratched at the door, wood groaning under its weight. Clara grabbed Daniel's locket from her desk, not for sentiment, but for its heft. If the wolves broke in, she'd fight. A crack split the air, not the door, but a rifle. The children screamed as the frame splintered, but it was John in the doorway, weapon raised. 2 shots rang out, one wolf dropped. Another yelped. The largest lunged, and John swung his rifle like a club, sending it sprawling. Clara's breath caught as man and beast grappled in the snow, John's knife flashing. Blood stained the white ground as the wolf fell limp. The others fled. John stood, his coat torn, blood streaking his sleeve. Everyone safe. He called, his eyes finding Clara's. She nodded, unable to speak, her hands still clutching the locket. The children surged forward, fear turning to awe. Did you see Mr. Carver fight that wolf? Benny shouted, like a storybook hero. John ignored them, crossing to Clara. His hands gripped her shoulders, searching her face. You hurt. Nah, you won. To me, she whispered, her voice shaking. His touch steadied her, but her legs wobbled. He caught her as she swayed, his arms strong despite the fight. You're not fine, he said softly. Lessons are done. You need rest. I can walk, she protested. But he swept her up, carrying her toward the main house. The children watched, wide-eyed, as Mrs. Lee met them, clucking over John's cuts, brandy and bandages. Sure, she ordered. Bustling off, in the parlor, Clara noticed John's hands, bloody, torn. You're hurt, she said, catching them before he could pull away. These need cleaning. Scratches. he grunted, but let her hold on. His eyes met hers, raw with something unspoken. When I saw those wolves at your door, you saved us, she said, still gripping his hands. She should let go. She didn't. I should have been closer, he said, voice rough. Should have seen them coming. You were there when it mattered. Mrs. Lee returned, breaking the moment. But Clara felt the shift, like snow settling after a storm. The wolves were gone, but something else had stirred. Something she wasn't ready to name. The town buzzed with the wolf story. Whispers following Clara to the store days later. Carver carried her right into his house. One woman hissed, a widow, living there, scandalous. Clara's cheeks burned, but she held her head high, buying flowers she could finally afford. That evening, she found John in his study, a small box on his desk, his face troubled. You've heard the talk. He said, not looking up. I have. She said, staying in the doorway, sensing the weight of what came next. I won't let your name be ruined. He opened the box, revealing a plain gold ring, a marriage of convenience, to protect your position. Nothing more needs to change. Clara's breath caught. Mr. Carver, John. He corrected. The children need you. The ranch needs stability. This fixes everything. Everything but her heart, she thought, staring at the ring. It wasn't Daniel's, long buried with him. This was new, heavy with possibility. The town will talk anyway, she said. Let them, he said, his voice firm. Better they talk about a marriage than gossip that shames you. She thought of her students, of Lily's drawings, of wolves and warmth. If I agree, she said, I keep my independence, my teaching, my own rooms. Agreed. His eyes softened. And we're honest. No lies about love or forever. Clara nodded. Taking the ring, it fit perfectly, as if he'd measured her in secret. Yes, John, I'll marry you. Clara, he said, her name soft on his lips. We'll tell the children together. They stood, the ring's weight new but not unwelcome. The future uncertain but shared. The chapel was quiet, only ranch hands and their families present. Clara wore gray, not black, John's request for a new start. Mrs. Lee pinned tiny white flowers in her hair, whispering, he's a good man, lonely too long, like you what? Lily burst in, her dress matching Clara's. Pa says it's time. The aisle was short, but John's gaze made it endless, hungry, hopeful, like he saw her for the first time. The vows were simple, their voices steady. When he slid the ring on, his touch lingered. Warm and sure, Reverend Holt handed them the certificate. Sign here, Mr. and Mrs. Carver, so it must be your. Clara's hand shook as she wrote her new name, Clara Carver. John's bold signature dwarfed hers, grounding her. The reception was small. Mrs. Lee's food abundant. The children's joy infectious. Will you stay forever? None up to none my sir and Marcia. Mrs. T. Carver? Lily asked, tugging her sleeve. Clara glanced at John, who paused mid-sentence with Way's father. Yes, she said. I'm staying. Evening fell. Snow soft outside. The certificate lay on John's desk, their names sealed. Your rooms are ready, he said, his voice neutral. Mrs. Lee added touches she thought you'd like. Clara turned, catching his eyes. Thank you for making this feel like a choice. He reached out, touching a flower in her hair. Winter jasmine. Sarah grew them. Mrs. Lee must have saved them. They're beautiful, Clara said, his first wife's memory a bridge, not a wall. She climbed to her rooms, finding Daniel's locket polished on her pillow. A note in John's hand. Monor, the past keeps time with the present. Both belong. Suster, she held the locket. Then her ring, old and new promises side by side. Outside, she heard John in his study, filing their certificate, making it real. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with something alive, something she couldn't name. Married life was a careful dance. Clara taught. John ranched, their meals polite but charged. She noticed his habits, early mornings, late nights pacing his study. One Monday, she found a jasmine blossom frozen in ice on her windowsill, perfect and haunting, like a fairy tale. Lily said in class, waiting for love's kiss. Clara blushed, brushing it off, but the flower lingered in her thoughts. Sarai. That evening, She found John in Sarah's old greenhouse, tending jasmine vines. The children loved the frozen flower, she said. He didn't turn. Kids see magic everywhere. And us? She asked, stepping closer. What do we see? He faced her, eyes intense. Practicality. Safety. A harbor. His voice wavered. Isn't that what we agreed? Her pulse quickened. Is it? He set down his shears, closing the gap. If I said I'm forgetting that agreement every day, what then? Clara's breath hitched. He was close, his scent wrapping around her. John, I see you were you, he said, softer. With the children. Ixidia Ricumanawans. In the kitchen. Everywhere. This isn't what I planned. What did you plan? She whispered. Not this, Saracho. He gestured, helpless. Not wanting. She thought of the frozen jasmine. Caught between life and death. I should go, she said, stepping back. Hutami Hanimum. Good evening, Mrs. Carver, he said, mask back in place. She fled, Daniel's locket heavy in her pocket. Its comfort now a question. Was it wrong to want again? Next morning, a fresh jasmine sat on her desk. Red and warm. No de canibadiantuam. But she knew. The children noticed her distraction. Are you sad, Mrs. Carver? Queriwayawiyaskin. No, nah, she learned. She said, smiling faintly. Just thinking. Lily grinned, as if she knew. On that rate, that night, Clara didn't hide in her room. She joined John in his study, sitting across from him. The children think I'm sad, she said. Are you? His pen stilled, eyes sharp. No, but I'm unsure. She twisted her ring. This isn't what I expected. What did you expect? Simplicity, safety. Not wanting more. Her voice shook. Not feeling like I'm betraying Daniel. John stood him. A narrow, slow, deliberate, what do you want? Huey and Tubberser. Clara, I don't know, she admitted. And that scares me. Then we wait, he said, half smile breaking through. I'm patient. Ask anyone who's seen me tame horses. She laughed, tension easing. Good night. John Waffer and Washer. Good night, Clara. She left, feeling the ice crack, not broken, but shifting. The blizzard hit without warning. Clara sent the children home early as snow fell, but the storm turned vicious. A swallowing the world in white. Everyone stays, John said, appearing in the bunkhouse, snow caking his coat. Way's father. Tell the families, the kids are safe here tonight. The children buzzed with excitement, piling into the main house. Mrs. Lee organized blankets. Clara told stories, keeping fear at bay. As night deepened, the children slept, sprawled across the parlor. John appeared with a quilt, his breath visible. You're shivering, he said, draping it over her. She recognized the stitching, Sarah's work. She made this, Clara said. Our first winter, John confirmed, sitting beside her, sharing the quilt's warmth. Said every home needed one. Clara hesitated, then asked tell me about her. Not her death, her life. He was quiet, then spoke. She loved impossible things. Growing jasmine in snow, teaching ranch hands to read. Timing me, he smiled faintly. I was wild when she found me. She tamed you, Clara teased. Civilized me. His shoulder brushed hers. She taught me strength is knowing when to yield. Is that why you've waited with me? Partly. His voice dropped. Mostly, I waited because you needed time. And because I had to be sure I wasn't chasing Sarah's ghost. He met her eyes. You're not her. You're Clara Carver. And that's who I want. Her heart pounded. The quilt heavy with shared history. I'm afraid, to shred our children, she whispered. Of wanting, of losing again. Do you think Daniel would want you frozen forever? John asked. No, she said, surprising herself. He believed love was for sharing, but knowing it, she touched her temple, isn't feeling it. Her hand fell to her chest. I know it was to him. His fingers found hers under the quilt. What, we carry them, but they don't own us. She looked at their hands, her ring gleaming. When did you know this was more than convenience? Your signature on our certificate, he said. Flowers in your hair. Nuances strength in your eyes. I knew I was falling. The words of Wasimishurindabanaj, honest and raw, made her laugh softly. A scandal, indeed. His thumb traced her palm. What do we do? Klatrawe, Serenuni, Serenobarn. She didn't answer. Instead, she kissed him, brief, soft. A snowflake's touch. It changed everything. His eyes widened, wonder mixed with want. Clara, Siri Urinderwas, Sarninum. He whispered, I'm still scared. So am I, she said. But I'm tired of being frozen. He cupped her face. And their second kiss was deeper, like spring breaking through ice. The quilt fell, forgotten, Serenkimurinum, as they held each other. The storm, a distant roar. Months later, a newspaper arrived, its ink smudged but damning. Clara read the notice alone in John's study. Perinina Worthkininaden, Tari Daniel Hensley, 35, died of fever and debts from gambling at the Silver Spur. Survived by wife. Clara Monazuari Nonanchonantasu of Thunder Valley. Debts call his death into question. Sudataranpinatam. The words burned. All those months, she'd thought Daniel fought only illness, not cards. The medicine she'd bought, the hunger she'd endured, all while he'd lost their future. John found her, the paper in her lap. I wondered when you'd see it, he said. Cautious. You knew him. Her voice was sharp, betrayal stinging. I checked after we married. He admitted. To protect you. Protect me. She stood, shaking. You paid his debts, didn't you? 3 months ago, he said. Loan sharks would have come for you. I couldn't let that happen. Why hide it? Her voice broke. Anger and hurt colliding. You weren't ready. He said, kneeling beside her. You needed to mourn the man you loved. That wasn't your choice. She snapped. Afrainian pacing. I taught truth to those children. And you kept this from me. I was wrong. He said, unflinching. I'm sorry. She stared out the window. Spring greening the valley. I feel foolish, she whispered, starving for a man who lied. You weren't foolish, John said fiercely. You were loyal. His failures don't erase your love. Tears fell, hot with rage. I trusted you. I know what the sir dears. He stood, voice steady. I love you, Clara. Sonori dishawansari. I wanted to shield you, wrongly. Luffer does for me run the Sawanum and Mabel. She turned, his words cutting through her anger. Like you couldn't shield Sarah. He flinched but nodded. Exactly. I'm not good at watching those I love hurt. Exhaustion replaced her fury. I don't know how to feel. You don't have to, he said. Be angry at Daniel. At me. At everything. No, wait. She looked at him. Then the paper. Hold me, she said suddenly. Just hold me. He crossed the room, wrapping her in his arms. She buried her face in his chest, breathing him in, leather, pine, safety. I'm sorry, he murmured, for his lies and mine. I know you don't want to bring it to brain, she said. And she did, understanding settling despite the pain. She folded the paper, tucking it into his desk, not hidden, but stored. A lesson learned. Outside, thunder rolled. But in his arms, Clara felt steady, choosing love over ignorance. Summer brought the town social, the hall alive with flowers and music. Clara wore blue, vibrant as the sky. A gift from John. Ellen handed her a dance card, smirking. Though I bet it'll only have one name. Clara opened it, her throat tightening. John's handwriting claimed every dance. He took her arm, his eyes warm, ready to scandalize them. You'll ruin me, she teased, but her heart raced as he led her to the floor. The waltz began, his hands sure against her back. They're staring, she whispered. Let them, he said. I've waited to do this right. He pulled her close. I love you, Quinain in them. Dear Clara, her breath caught. I love you, John, dumb. His steps faltered, joy breaking through his calm. Lily darted through the crowd, waving a drawing, Clara and John dancing. Hearts scrawled around them. You look like a fairy tale, she said. John scooped her up, never missing a beat. What do fairy tales teach? Lily Winwano. Love wins, she crowed, hugging him. Clara laughed and mean, meeting John's eyes. She's smarter than most here. Picnic next week, he said, setting Lily down. All the kids. Time we acted like a family. No objections, Clara said, spinning into the next dance, feeling alive. Free, harvest gilded the valley. Clara watched their new school rise, its frame strong against the sky. John joined her, dusty from work, holding a deed, joint ownership. This say, Demersham, he said. Your dream, our future. She traced their names, Mr. and Mrs. Sormach, John Carver. It's more than a school, she said. It's hope for every child. He smiled, pointing, added a nursery. For someday, her heart skipped. Lily ran up, tugging her to the door. Above it, carved deep, read, Thunder Valley School, founded by Clara Carver. Ashura, once continue your legacy, John said, his hand brushing her waist. About that someday, Clara said, turning to him. I'm fairly sure. His eyes widened. Then he spun her in a circle, laughing as workers cheered. Are you happy? He asked, setting her down. I never thought I could be again, she admitted. After Daniel, I thought love was done. Now, it grows, makes room. He kissed her, heedless of the crowd, and Clara knew this was joy, not scandal. Winter returned, fierce and unforgiving. John caught fever helping repair a neighbor's roof, and Clara sat by his side, twisting their rings, his removed for safety, hers warm against her skin. He burned, calling for Sarah in his delirium. I'm here, Clara whispered, cooling his brow. Don't leave, Mrs. Lee brought tea, her eyes heavy, like before. Naso duo was, de wounerum. Not like before, Clara said, fierce. I won't lose him. She fed him broth, bathed his skin, whispered promises. You carried me. She said, let me carry you. In clear moments, he smiled weakly. Not what you signed up for. Mornikana subordirana serwanas, she said, kissing his hand. We're having a child. You have to stay. His eyes found her belly, hope flickering. Son or daughter, Milwaukee with you. Either Redawanchida, she said, pressing his hand to her stomach. They need you. Lily slipped in, leaving a drawing John. Clary, a baby. Clara hung it where he'd see, it tethered to life. On the third night, his fever broke. You should be in bed, he teased, voice faint but his. Clara laughed through tears, curling beside him. Who else would be here? He touched their rings on her finger. Keeping us safe, like you did, she said. We keep each other now. I was afraid, she admitted later. Sarah's death wasn't your fault. Daniel's wasn't mine. We choose the future, he said, hand on her belly. I choose you. Spring burst early, roses blooming in Sarah's greenhouse. Clara sat with the Carver Bible, its pages worn with history. John joined her, pen in hand, ready to make it official. She nodded. Hussum, watching him write. John Thomas Carver and Clara Grace Hensley Carver, married December 10th, 1885. Child expected May 1886. On another page lay Daniel's locket and Sarah's jasmine sprig, pressed among memories. Look out, some, Clara said, showing him, they're part of us. He pulled her close. They're child kicking. Catherine Sarah for a girl, she said. Daniel John for a boy. Perfect. Number new one on. He whispered, voice thick. Lily's voice rang outside. Papa says the baby comes with the roses. Wise man, John said, smiling. Emma closed the Bible, their story woven with the past, blooming toward the future. May 1st glowed bright, roses vivid in the greenhouse. Clara stood before the new school, hand on her belly, as John fixed the brass bell. Perfect timing, he called, baby and bell. Ready to ring? The valley gathered, children in their best. Clara and John pulled the rope together, the bells chimed soaring, pure and true. That made her one. Pain gripped her mid-cheer, sharp and certain. John. She gasped. The baby. Mrs. Lee took charge, ushering her home as women rallied. Hours later, under a golden sunset, their daughter cried out, Catherine Sarah Carver, dark-eyed like her father. She's perfect, John said, cradling her. Clara watched, Heartful surasmanawu. Through the window, the school's bell gleamed, its shadow a blessing. Our newest student, she said, and teacher, Yeshua Sereniter. John added, she'll learn your love. I love you, Clara said, Catherine between them. And I love you, he replied, kissing her. My convenient bride, my everything. My everything. The bell waited for tomorrow, ready to call children to learn, to grow, to hear the story of love that thawed winter's frost, a story of roses, ringing true across Thunder Valley. The summer of 1886 stretched long and golden across Thunder Valley, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers and fresh-cut hay. Clara Carver stood in the doorway of the new school, watching her students chase each other through the grass, their laughter a melody that soothed the edges of her heart. Catherine Sarah, barely 2 months old, slept in a woven basket at her feet, tiny fists curled like secrets. Clara's hand rested on the doorframe, her wedding ring catching the sunlight, a quiet reminder of how far she'd come from that desperate winter. Inside, the classroom smelled of chalk and polished wood, its walls already adorned with the children's drawings. Lily Wong's sketches of horses, Benny Miller's lopsided mountains, Wei Wong's careful map of the ranch. Clara's desk held Daniel's locket, no longer a weight but a touchstone, its silver warmed by the morning light. She glanced at it, then at Catherine, her chest tightening with a love so fierce it scared her sometimes. The past lingered, but it no longer owned her. John's boots crunched on the path behind her, his shadow falling long across the threshold. They're supposed to be studying geography. He said, his voice warm with mock reproach, not racing like wild colts. Clara turned, a smile tugging at her lips. Let them run. They'll learn better with the wind in their hair. She studied him, dust on his hat, sweat on his brow, his gray eyes softer than they'd been a year ago. The man who'd fought wolves and fever for her now carried a different strength, one built on trust and time. He crouched beside Catherine, brushing a finger over her cheek. She's got your nose, he said, his voice low, as if afraid to wake her. Lucky girl. And your stubborn chin, Clara countered, her heart skipping at the way he looked at their daughter, like she was a miracle he didn't deserve. She reached for his hand, their fingers lacing naturally, the calluses on his palm a map of their shared life. Town's buzzing again, John said, standing but not letting go. They're calling the school Clara's Folly. Nah, say it's too grand for a ranch town. Let them talk, she said, her tone light but firm. They'll send their children come fall. They always do. She'd heard the whispers at the store, some admiring, some skeptical, but they no longer cut deep. The school was hers, theirs, a promise carved into the valley's bones. John's thumb traced her knuckles. You're not worried about gossip, she shook her head. I've survived worse than wagging tongues. Her mind flicked to that winter, hunger, grief for him, the weight of Daniel's secrets. Then to John's study, the newspaper that had shattered her illusions but hadn't broken her. We've built something real. That's what matters, he nodded, his gaze drifting to the school's bell tower, its brass gleaming against the sky. Got a surprise for you later. After supper, Clara raised an eyebrow. Another nursery, he laughed. The sound rare and rich. Not quite. You'll see. He kissed her forehead, quick but lingering, then tipped his hat to the children. Better round them up. Mrs. Carver? I've got fences to mend. She watched him go, his stride sure across the land he'd made theirs. The children swarmed back, breathless and giggling, and Clara clapped her hands. Inside, all of you. Time to map the Missouri River. They groaned but obeyed, their energy a spark that kept her own alive. The day passed in a blur of lessons, rivers, fractions, a story about Lewis and Clark that had Lily waving her hand with endless questions. Clara taught with a lightness she hadn't known a year ago, her voice steady, her hands no longer trembling. When the sun dipped low, she dismissed the class, tucking Catherine into a sling against her chest. The baby stirred, her dark eyes blinking up, and Clara hummed softly, a lullaby Daniel had loved. The memory didn't sting, it warmed, like sunlight through leaves. At the ranch house, Uwatu Warnim Surhinoin, Mrs. Lee greeted her with a steaming pot of stew and a knowing smile. Mr. John's planning something, she said, chopping carrots with precision. Won't tell me what, but he's been whistling all day. Clara laughed. Setting Catherine in a cradle by the hearth. That's a dangerous sign. She helped set the table, the routine grounding her. The house smelled of bread and comfort. Its walls no longer foreign but home. She caught her reflection in a window, her cheeks fuller, her eyes bright. The blue dress John had chosen hugging her frame. She looked like a woman who'd chosen life over loss. John returned as dusk settled. His face flushed from work, but his grin boyish. Ready for that surprise? He asked. Washing up at the sink. Clara crossed her arms, teasing. If it's another quilt, Mrs. Lee's already got 3 stored away. Better, sir, he said, drying his hands. He took Catherine, cradling her with ease, and led Clara outside. The evening air was cool, stars pricking the sky. He guided her to the school. Stopping at the bell tower, a lantern hung from a post, casting a soft glow. Beneath it, on a small wooden table, sat a leather-bound book, its cover embossed with Thunder Valley School. 1846. Clara's breath caught. She opened it, finding pages filled with her students' work. Drawings, essays, even Lily's map of the ranch, all carefully bound. Her name was inscribed inside. Punchi, founded by Clara Grace Carver. John Wisharanari, she whispered, tracing the words. How? Collected it over the spring, he said, shifting Catherine to his shoulder. The kids helped, wanted it to be a record of what you've done here. Not just a school, a legacy. Tears pricked her eyes, not from sadness, but from the weight of being seen. You didn't have to. Wanted to. He set Catherine in her basket, stepping closer. You gave me a future. Clara won. This is my way of saying it's yours. She closed the book, clutching it to her chest, and kissed him, soft at first, then deeper. The lantern light painting them in gold. Catherine cooed, breaking the moment, and they laughed, foreheads touching. Thank you, Clara said, her voice thick, for believing in me. Always, he said, and she felt the truth of it, solid as the earth beneath them. Fall brought cooler winds in the school's first official term. Clara stood at her desk, Catherine napping in the nursery John had built. As 20 students filled the room, ranch kids mingled with town children, their parents won over by the bell's clear call. She taught with a confidence honed by survival, her lessons weaving history with hope. The valley felt different now, united by the school, its promise stronger than old grudges. One crisp October morning, Clara found a letter on her desk, the envelope marked Helena. Her stomach tightened. Helena held Daniel's ghosts, his debts, his lies, for making no me. She opened it, her hands steady despite the flicker of dread. Inside was a note from a lawyer, formal and brief for the estate of Daniel Hensley has been settled. No further claims remain. Enclosed is a sum recovered from prior assets. Konaitin. A bank draft fluttered out, small, but enough to buy books, slates, a Kington. Maybe a new coat for Catherine. Clara exhaled, the last thread of Daniel's shadow cut. She tucked the letter away, not in anger but in peace, and turned to her class, ready to teach. That evening, she showed John the letter over supper, Catherine babbling in her lap. It's done, she said, passing him the draft. No more debts, poor sordens. He read it, then set it aside, his hand covering hers. You're free, he said, but his eyes said more, that she'd been free long before this, choosing him, choosing them. Not free, she corrected, smiling. Bound to you, to her, to this sea, to knitter. She nodded at the school through the window, its bells silent but waiting. John squeezed her hand. Good kind of bound. Winter loomed, but Clara no longer feared it. The school had a stockpile of wood, the house a full pantry, and her heart a warmth no frost could touch. One snowy evening, as Catherine slept and John stoked the fire, Clara opened the family Bible, its pages a map of their lives. She added a line beneath their marriage. Corneturique Catherine Sarah Carver, born May Mercer, Sum, in Chartres, 1886. John watched, his arm around her, and she felt Daniel's locket and Sarah's jasmine in those pages, not as burdens but as roots. Think she'll teach someday? John asked, nodding at Catherine's cradle. Or ranch, Shishtamas or Tomashin, Clara said, leaning into him. She's got us both in her. He kissed her temple. Lucky kid. Outside, the valley slept under snow. But inside, love burned bright, a flame kindled in winter. Now blazing through every season, the bell would ring tomorrow. Doita Bashani Warmananawananashuran, calling children to learn, to grow. Desfurin Shimmerman, to carry forward a story of roses that bloomed against all odds, of hearts that thawed to find forever. Pawainterni, Durar, Paman, winter's grip softened as the years unfolded in Thunder Valley, each season weaving new threads into Clara and John Carver's story. By the spring of 1890, the school stood prouder than ever. Its walls expanded to welcome nearly 40 students from ranches and town alike. Clara, you were, now 30, moved through her classroom with a quiet grace, her hazel eyes alight with purpose. Catherine Sarah, erupted to watch her one, almost 4, darted among the desks, her dark curls bouncing as she helped her mother arrange slates. Her chatter a constant song. The nursery held a second cradle now. Daniel Thomas Carver, born the previous summer, his gummy smile a mirror of his father's rare grins. Clara paused at her desk, touching the leather-bound book John had given her years ago, its pages thick with her students' work. Letters, poems, drawings that mapped the valley's growth. Beside it lay Daniel's locket, open to his photograph, and a dried jasmine sprig from Sarah's greenhouse, both pressed into the family Bible that rested nearby. The past was no longer a shadow but a foundation, its lessons carved deep in Clara's heart. She'd learned to hold grief and joy together, to let love bloom without fear. Outside, the school bell gleamed, its chime a daily call that echoed across the valley. Clara's fingers brushed the carved lintel. Thunder Valley School, founded by Clara Grace Carver, worn smooth by children's hands. The words no longer startled her. They felt true, like her name beside John's in the Bible, like the weight of their rings, worn and warm against her skin. John strode up the path. Daniel balanced on his hip. Catherine trailing behind with a fistful of wildflowers. Thought I'd save you the trouble of rounding her up, he said, his gray eyes crinkling. Dust clung to his hat, but his smile was bright, unburdened in a way Clara still marveled at. The man who'd once carried the weight of loss alone now wore fatherhood like a badge, his love for their children as fierce as his love for her. Trouble, der wana hanemern, Clara teased, taking Daniel, who gurgled and grabbed her hair. She's my best assistant. She kissed Catherine's forehead, tucking a flower behind her ear. What's this for? Sweet girl. For the book, Catherine said, serious, to keep forever. Clara's throat tightened. She'd taught her daughter to press flowers in the Bible, just as she'd kept Sarah's jasmine in Daniel's memory. Perfect, she said, leading them inside. The classroom was empty now. The children gone home, but it hummed with life, slates stacked, books neat, a map of Montana pinned to the wall, its rivers traced by tiny hands. John set Daniel in the cradle, watching Clara arrange Catherine's flowers on her desk. Got a letter today, he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. From the territory board. They want you to speak at their meeting in Helena. Something about model schools. Kinda. Clara laughed, shaking her head. Man want a room. They must be desperate. What concern? They're smart, he corrected, stepping closer. This place, your work, it's changing things. Kids reading, writing why, dreaming bigger than this valley. That's you. Clara. At Chisurinum once, her cheeks warmed, but she met his eyes, seeing the pride there, steady as ever. It's us, she said. You built this as much as I did, he shrugged, but his hand found hers. Their rings clicking softly. I hauled lumber. You built hope. Catherine tugged at Clara's skirt. Tell the story. Mama? About the wolves in the snow. Clara exchanged a glance with John, their shared memory sparking like a flame. She lifted Catherine onto her lap, settling beside the cradle. Well, she began, her voice warm. It started in the coldest winter, when a stubborn teacher thought she could face the frost alone, and a lonely rancher fought wolves to save her. Catherine added, eyes wide. John chuckled, sitting close, Sir one in one certain son, his arm around them both. Don't forget the part where she saved him right back. Clara smiled, her heart full. Love found a way, she finished, like roses growing through snow. Catherine clapped, satisfied, and Daniel cooed, as if he understood. Evening fell, painting the valley in hues of amber and rose. Clara and John walked home, Catherine skipping ahead, Daniel asleep against John's shoulder. The school stood behind them, its bell silent but waiting, a beacon for tomorrow's lessons. Clara thought of the Bible's pages, Daniel's locket, Sarah's jasmine, their children's births inked beside their marriage. Each mark told a story of loss and redemption, of love that endured like the valley itself. At the house of one Mrs. Lee greeted them with supper, her sharp eyes softening at the sight of the family. "Good day," she asked, ladling stew. "The best dumber in," Clara said, meaning it or Nayunawantun. She looked at John, at their children, at the life they'd built from ashes. The winter of 1885 was a distant memory, its chill no match for the warmth they'd kindled. As stars pierced the sky, Clara stood in Sarah's greenhouse, now hers, tending jasmine vines that bloomed year-round. John joined her, his presence a quiet anchor. "Thinking about Helena?" he asked. "Thinking about us," she said, turning to him. "How we got here. How we're still here." He pulled her close, his breath warm against her hair. "Through blizzards and wolves and stubborn hearts, and love, we could one in one up pilgrim," she added, tilting her face to his. Their kiss was soft. Familiar, a promise kept. Outside, the valley slept, cradled by mountains that had seen their hardest days and their brightest. The school bell waited for dawn, ready to ring out a truth Clara now knew by heart. Love, like seasons, always returned, stronger for the frost it had survived. They stepped into the night, hand in hand, their children's laughter echoing from the house. The jasmine scent trailing behind, Thunder Valley stretched before them, its future written in their names. Their school, their story, a testament to roses that bloomed in winter, to hearts that thawed to claim forever. Poor howdy, folks. Welcome back to Thunder Valley's Tale, where the winds of winter and the warmth of love weave stories that stick with you like a Montana sunset. I'm thrilled you're here, riding alongside Clara and John through their journey of heart and hope. If this story's got you hooked, maybe tugged a tear or sparked a smile, hit that subscribe button and join our campfire. There's more to come, with surprises waiting like wildflowers after a storm. Drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. Let's keep this valley alive together.